Alrighty, we are recording. Welcome everyone to the Ep14, where we bring together our fellow Americans to discuss the future prosperity of our country. One of the main segments of this podcast is interviewing successful Americans, where we aim to inspire young Americans to either find a career that they like, get into fitness, adopt healthy habits and philosophies. And I always figured what better way to do that than to hear from real Americans who have found their own path to success in one way or another. Which brings me to today's guest, my longtime friend, Mr. Austin Maldonado.
What's up, man? I guess just a brief intro about myself. Went to community college. I know that's something we both have in common. From there, transferred to UC Irvine through the guaranteed admission program. I don't think they have that anymore, unfortunately. So I got kind of lucky over there. Went to UCI for criminology. While I was there, realized I wasn't too into criminology. So I decided to take on another major, double major in mathematics. And then from there, just see what prospect opportunities were available. I didn't really have a goal in mind. Which, I think there's a lot of emphasis on when you go to college, you should have, a certain major, because some other majors aren't as, they don't open the doors to immediate opportunities. But I guess you could say I was like one of those kids that also kind of just didn't have a sense of direction. I feel like that's a lot of, because it's hard to ask, kids these days to choose on decide on a career that you're going to do for the rest of your life at such a young age, right? We just graduated high school.
I think we all struggle with it.
We really do, yeah. Like obviously, there's a lot of us that do know immediately, like what we want to do. Like the bio majors who want to become doctors, the comp sci majors who want to become software engineers, right? Those guys, obviously that's a good track. But I think for most of us, it's kind of hard to decide right after, like once we turn 18, like, oh, what do we want to do in college? What do we want to just rest our lives, dedicate our, passion or effort or time into pursuing. So I was one of those kids, but if I had any advice just off the bat, I don't think if you don't know, like me, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think you always have options. I think the best you could do is always keep your options open, though, whether it's with schooling or just, connections, just always trying to keep options available.
I feel like, I know that you and I was, resonated with you because we both decided to go the community college route versus a lot of our peers, let's say, they jumped right into a 4-year, right? So like,
For sure.
David, my brother, who you've known since you guys were 6 or something, right? So, but I know, when he graduated high school, he jumped right into a 4-year degree over at San Diego State, which again, a lot of people do. And I myself, on the other hand, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to major in, what I even wanted to do. I didn't even know really what I liked. I know I liked the field I know I liked the topic of psychology, but I had no idea how to make a career out of that. So, I, similar to you, went the path of community college, which, you have that ability to switch your major like 5-6 times without really paying the finances for it, right? Is that probably why you went down that path of community college?
I think also just a big thing is like your first couple of years, like it's mostly a lot of it's like general ed courses, right? So I think it's what's really good about once you like make that transition from high school to college. The first set of courses you're taking, like everyone has to take, right? They're not specialized towards a certain major. So I think that's very critical, right? Because that buys you more time. So for me, I remember first year I was taking like all the courses I took, like everyone else is taking, right? And it's like it gives you an extra year kind of just, exactly, like geography, just random courses. They have like humanities and stuff. So I thought that's something that's also I think for incoming high school students as well, they don't have a direction, you do have an extra year. You don't have to decide immediately. I think that's something my sister right now is having an issue with. She graduated a year ago, and then she doesn't know what she wants to do, and she's very stressed. It's it hits you once you graduate high school, oh, now you gotta go to college, future, right? It's not really a kid anymore. she's also been struggling with that as well. But I try to remind her like you have time. It's not the end of the world. You have your general ed courses. They're kind of like a barrier to help you.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then obviously Perks Community College, we both went. You save a lot of money, obviously, compared to for your universities. It does depend though on the major. I think if you were computer science engineer or computer science major or bio and becoming a doctor, I think there are more perks to just going straight to a four-year university, right? When it comes to like applying medical schools and
Hmm.
so forth. But I do think that's a good alternative, right? If you don't know immediately, like you can also just save some money, go to community college, and then transfer. I think that's a very viable option.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like you touched on something earlier that I just totally under appreciated, I guess. But yeah, when I was in community college, like, I first started off as a psychology major. And then
Yeah,
I remember really hating my general ed classes because I was like,
yeah,
man, I just want to learn psychology. Like, I don't care about
Mhm.
anthropology or geography. And
Yeah,
all of a sudden, I took a geography class, let's say, that I like really
Mhm.
liked. And I was like, oh man, I
Mhm.
never thought I'd be into this kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
I didn't go down that path, let's say, but now I found out that that was a topic that I found interesting and that allowed
Of
me, let's
course.
say, to like get a better insight into both geography of other countries, but also
Mhm.
different cultures, different if you live in a cold area versus a warm area, that impacts how your society runs and
For
operates. So it's
sure.
like all
For
this type
sure.
of stuff that I just never thought about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. hmm Yeah, it's very insightful. Like I think, yeah, that's a good point. Like when you have to take all these different courses, right? You also learn more about like what your interests are. Um, for example, like I don't know, taking all those courses, I realized I didn't really have any interest in anything. Have any interest in any of these courses, but
Hmm.
I knew I had to take them. Get good grades in them, just keep options available, right? Because again, I did want to transfer. I think that's also another thing. Community college, right? You probably have faced similar issues. Like it's easy to get stuck there, right? Because it's once you, it's like very like chill vibes. It's like a middle
It's like
ground between
it's
high
high school
school.
2.0, huh?
Yeah, it's like a middle ground between high school and college. It's not really like like a four-year university, like not university, a university as in like there's like not on-campus housing. There's not, what I'm saying? It's like kind of like it's like a transfer portal, and it's easy to get stuck there, right? If you know, like if you let yourself get stuck there, you really have to be determined. Keep your keep the main thing, like the main thing, and just yeah, have a plan.
I kind of feel like I don't know. Was it the same for you? But I feel like when I transferred
Mhm.
from community college to San Diego State, I feel like at
Yeah,
community college there was like a lot of people who were 30 years old or over. So it was like I felt like there was more
dude. Yeah,
adults
that's
there,
it.
right? Like paying for
That's it.
their school, like
Mhm.
they're working jobs. And then when I
That was
went
a
to San
spot for
Diego
sure.
State, there was like a lot. It seemed like I was back with 19-year-olds and shit.
Yeah, we were like your age group. Yeah, for sure, dude.
Yeah.
I remember in a couple of my classes, like you see like businessmen walk in like full on dress, like suits and everything. Like carrying briefcases. You're like this is my classmate. It's wild. It's wild to think about, right? So
Yeah.
that's a good point as well.
Yeah. So what, because I completely forgot, like, I know that you ended up majoring
Yeah,
in math, but initially you
yeah.
were criminal justice. I forgot about that. How did you get down that journey and what was that all about?
So to be fair, man, I totally shortcut the system. Like I saw criminology. If I were to transfer in mathematics, I think I would have to take more courses. Right? And I didn't have the interest in mathematics really. Like I wasn't good at math, but I really didn't have like interest. Like I could pursue that as a major till like after freshman year. But at that
Hmm.
point, I had to take so many more courses, right, just to be able to transfer, right? But I didn't want to, I didn't want to wait. I was pretty impatient. I just wanted to hurry up and get to university. I had the feeling that I went here 2 years, saved money. I'm ready to go university. Um, so I chose criminology because one, it was something I was interested in, but also the curriculum was the shortest. Like I didn't have there's like the set of classes that I needed to take that were required in
Yeah.
order to transfer over were far like substantially less than mathematics. So that was
Hmm.
also a big reason as well why I chose criminology.
Yeah. No, I totally resonate with that. Because I
Mhm.
talked to the same, when I interviewed David, I talked about how, like, I knew I wanted to get into some sort of business career. And when
For
I
sure.
just compared like economics, business admin, marketing, sales, economics was
Mhm.
like half the amount of credit. So I was like, okay, shit,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just looking to get a bachelor's degree. Like, that
Mhm.
allows me to get done in 4 years and it opens up enough doors for me to put in my own kind of personal effort and try to network and find internships and stuff, and it ended up paying off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know for sure, man. It's something you definitely take into consideration for sure.
Yeah.
Curriculum.
So you chose that topic just because like you had an interest in it. It was your kind of fastest way to get to transfer to a
Yep.
4-year, right? And then you ended up transferring to UC Irvine, correct?
Yeah, and also in the middle of this, I think we both worked as student workers for the district attorney's office as well. So that also like I was like, all right, well, I'm already working here, might as well, why not like become a lawyer? You know what I'm saying? Even though I was like, I don't
Yeah.
have like the biggest, aspirations to become one, but I always thought I was like, academically inclined. I thought I could do it. So I was like, all right, I'm working here already. Choose criminology. Went to
Yeah.
UCI. Um, you know, took all the criminology courses. There's actually not that many at UCI as well. Took the criminology courses, but in the process, I was still working at the district attorney's office.
Yeah. Because you're in
So
the
and that
North
was
County branch. I
yeah,
forgot
yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I was in Vista, and it was like from Vista to Irvine to where I was living. It was like maybe like an hour commute, right? So, and for us, they had us have a set schedule. It was like I think it was like 7:30 or 8, 8 being the absolute latest, right? And then while you're doing this, you have to work a minimum of like 20 hours um, while going to school. And that just kind of just wore on me as well, like having to wake up extra early, while being a student as well, and then just having to drive all the way down to Vista, right? Work your shift, and then from there drive all the way back in traffic, usually
Yeah.
back to
SoCal
Irvine.
traffic.
Yeah, so it adds up. I did it for a good like 2 quarters. At UCI, where the quarter system, so it's 10 weeks. I did that for a good 2 quarters, and then I kind of the wear and tear of that, alongside of just not really having like I see the lawyer schedule. I didn't think that's something I would want to do. Like they get up, that they get there way before me. Sometimes I get there like 6:30, and like the lot's kind of full. I'd
Mhm.
be kind of shocked by that, right? Going to the office, see all the lawyers already working, so they have a tough schedule. I kind of saw that, and I was like, well, you got to have some passion too, to, like towards what you like. I know a lot of like depends on the culture your parents you're brought up in, but I know like some parents kind of like choose their profession for their kids as well,
Oh,
which could
absolutely.
be yeah, it could be a good and bad thing depending on how you look at it, right? My mother wasn't like that, so um, she didn't really force me to do anything. So I kind of felt like I need to find balance. Like you want to be successful, right? But you also want to like doing what your profession. You want to like have some enjoyment off that. And I feel like I couldn't get that from becoming a lawyer. If that's
Yeah.
the path I wanted to take, I was like, no, it's like on top of that you add in like all the debt as well you have to go into potentially, right? Not everyone, but most of us who don't like get scholarships or so forth. Like it's a tough journey, and I just feel like my passion didn't match what was up ahead potentially.
Yeah. Well, and that's important, as well. Like the fact that you
Yeah.
you picked that path, you were going down it, but in that process, you determined that, hey, this
Mhm.
actually doesn't align with my strengths and passions as much as something else would. Because like I went
Yeah.
down that similar path where I was studying for the LSAT because I was also at the DA's office, like, hey, shoot, I don't know what I
Mhm.
want to do. I like communicating with people. I like talking to people. I like building and debating, let's say. But
Mhm.
as I started to study for it, I just determined like, okay, wow, like one, I'm not the quickest
Mhm.
reader, let's say, right? That's like a big part of the
Yeah.
job. And as I
Yeah.
was like in the office, I was talking to as many prosecutors and attorneys as I could to say, hey, like
Mhm.
how did you get in this career? Like what's the good, the bad, and the ugly? Like what do you recommend it for someone in my situation? And
Of
I will
course.
say, like, after talking to a dozen of them, I determined,
Mhm.
like, okay, shoot, this really isn't a good decision for me because, a lot of the people
Yeah.
who get into law school, just to your point, is like, dude, there's so much debt, there's so many hours, it's very stressful. But if you love
Bro, yeah.
that
Sure.
career, it pays
Mhm.
off. And if you don't, then all of a sudden you're going to find yourself like 1 year into being an attorney with all this debt and then deciding to go do something else, which, hey, you have the
Mhm.
skills now, but, maybe that wasn't necessarily the best, path forward. So I totally resonate with that.
Yeah, man, it beats you up too. Like my girlfriend's experienced the current dilemma. Like she didn't really have a choice. She had to become a doctor. Chinese upbringing. She had to. Yeah, bro. She's
Yeah.
either a doctor or
Oh,
software
that's real.
engineer. Yeah, and
Yeah.
her brother's a software engineer, so she's like, want to become a doctor. It really, dude, it really tests you. Like, man, like that. You add on like all the expenses, but the hard, schedule. You get this. She's in her third year, so now she's working her, rotations while having to study. And it's not just her. Like most med students, it really makes you question, right? Because it is a sense of delayed gratification. You have to wait to become a doctor. You're not immediately, it's a journey, right? So until you actually make, like, depending on the specialty you go into, you don't make any money really until a set amount of years. So you really need to grind a lot before you get to that point, right? You have to do the 4 year university, take your MCAT, apply med school, and you have to do another 4 years, right? And then based on there, like if you want to do general or whatever specialty, it's even additional, working and stuff. So it really does test you, and you have to have some passion for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you touched on it right there, but like a big part of the Ape podcast message is delayed gratification, right? Because even if we
Exactly.
think about like, driving back and forth from Irvine to Vista
Yeah.
was horrible, but
Mm.
like I'm sure how much did you learn in that process of just being in an
Yeah.
office environment? Like, because me and David were talking about this where I was grateful, like, 18 years old, goofy kid, where
Mm.
all the, but I'm working in an office setting where people are giving me responsibilities. They're treating me with
Mhm.
like an adult. And it was like, even though I didn't go down that path, I learned a lot and, and
Mm.
was glad that I put in those hours and the driving back and forth to get that exposure. So it's necessary to learn, even if you're not going down that path, to learn what you like and learn something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just to go off of delayed gratification too. Like I think that's just a good you could apply that to so many things in life. Like
Health.
I think that a big, yeah, exactly, health too, eating healthy, like something just helping your future self, right? But in the present, like making decisions in the present that will help, impact your future and stuff. I think it's very important. And I think you can apply anytime you're like you may have a rough patch, like say you have like hard work schedule or, very busy, right? I personally always try to tell myself like how I'm going to feel in a couple of days after it's done, right? Because you only have to, I always have this mentality of you only have to do it. It's not like, always true, but you always have to do like, just do it once, right? Just get it over
Hmm.
with. And then you don't have to do it again, even though say you will have to do it again or something, but just having that mindset of like, oh, my future self, once I'm in that moment, like 2, 3 days from now, I'm very, very glad, got this shit done, honestly. So for sure, I think big time delayed gratification is something that everybody should try and adopt. Like your future self will thank you for it. So
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things you can control, right? Because there's so much in life
Exactly.
that you can't control. There's a lot of like bullshit that happens that, life is life. But what you
Yeah.
can control is, hey, in this moment, if I can make a sacrifice right now and sacrifice this immediate pleasure, this immediate easier path, I know that
Yeah.
down the line, I'm going to be really happy that I did that and actually, have that six pack I wanted, or have that,
Yeah,
or have
exactly. Yeah.
those, whatever it is. So, like, exactly to your point, it's health, business, mindset, all that type of stuff. Um, I'd be curious. So, because I want to jump into like, so you went down the path of criminology, kind of, switch your
Mhm.
major to math. Like, did you
Yeah.
find out that you had to? Did you find out that like instead of graduating in four
Mhm.
years, you had to graduate in 5 or 6? Like,
Yeah.
did it add all those types of requirements that you probably had some mental dilemma of like, shoot, I'm going to graduate later, but I know that I would prefer this major over the other.
Yeah. So I have a cool story about that, man. I did have to take an extra year, right? Because I switched over mathematics, and I didn't switch over immediately, right? So once I got there, I switched over towards the end of third year. So at that point, I'm like, I have to take a lot of mathematics courses, right? Because I'm not like the standard like 4 year, guy came in for mathematics. I like pushed a lot of these things because I didn't have the, aspirations of that major and stuff like that. That was my curriculum. So in doing so, I had to take an extra year, which I did not want to do, right? It's more expenses, right? For going to college, extra year expenses. Top of that, a big thing is you see your friends, right, graduate. A lot of my friends graduated early, so you see that they're already starting with their life, right? They're already in that professional setting, on their career paths. Um, and then, yeah, it's tough, but you got to look at the good things. I think whenever there's a negative, there's always some positive, right? For me personally, that was like, getting that extra year really allowed me to like mature more, because I don't think I've been ready just to hop into the labor force, like deal with, applying for jobs and stuff. I think
Hmm.
my mental health would have taken like, like a steep decline just because I know that's something a lot of people deal with once they graduate, or like that, making that jump.
Yeah. Any
It gave
life
me,
transition.
yeah, exactly. So it gave me an extra year to like, mature more, to actually understand what I want to do, gain more experience. I don't think I would have, also met my girlfriend as well, who I'm currently with, if I didn't take the extra year, right? Because that's when I, met up for, we started dating. So there's always positives and any negatives. Like I know a lot of times we think like, oh, this sucks, like, but there's always going to be something good that comes out of it, right? You have to have that mentality, and you just need to understand that, like, you can't, like you said, you control, you control what you control. So just make
Yeah.
the best of each situation.
Dude, see that's why I like I mean that's one of the more positive factors of like interviewing successful people is because like we all went through our shitty times, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
inevitable
dude.
that you
Sure.
will either fail or experience some form of suffering, but now
Yeah.
that you're in your current shoes today, you know that things worked out and you were glad that you went through that hiccup or you went through that,
Yeah, I
you
wouldn't
know.
change it for sure. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And that's like again one of the messages I'm trying to push. But so you recently got a new job, right? Like you mind kind of walking through like how you
Yeah,
went
of
down that
course.
path? Like what what is that career? Is this something that you recommend for people? Is it for some some personalities versus other personalities? Maybe give us the rundown.
Yeah, for sure, man. As you know, I do have I work two jobs, but I'm only going to talk about one today. The current one. It's how I kind of got in the field was you only need a bachelor's, right, for this, because I worked as a credentialing specialist for a travel nurse company. So what we would do is like we get these travel nurses all set up, right. But that kind of led to where I am now. It's kind of hybrid between that and recruiter, right? And that kind of came about is because I was working recruiter, right? And you noticed I was very well spoken. Had what he thought was the most important thing with these kinds of work, these lines of work, is having perspective and patience, right? Because you have to deal with people, and sometimes
Hmm.
people, how that goes, right? So you just have to have perspective. You can't ever take things personal. You gotta in our line of field we do with travel nurses, and I had to kind of got like it got a lot. I gained a lot more perspective working as a recruiter because it's like their employment as a credentialing specialist. You kind of just get them help set up for their employment, so it's not as stressful
Hmm.
on their end. But what I learned working there, yeah, is just that travel nurses, they work long hours. They work long hours. They work like 4 days in a row, just like 12-hour shifts, sometimes longer. They're exhausted, right? And they're the
Hmm.
whole time they're moving around, like they're busy, busy, busy. So, and sometimes they don't go off their shifts till like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. So when you're waking up, they're getting off work. So I think having perspective and understanding that they might not be in the most like, the best mental state,
Hmm.
and just like trying to help them is very important, because I've gotten like not cursed out, but I've gotten definitely got attitude and like not like stuff like that's like beneficial to helping them with their onboarding, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of like I've gone ranted about like their work schedule, and I get it, like it's tough. They're not in the best mental state, man. They're like sleep deprived. They're just worked long hours. On top of
Yeah.
us in our industry, most of the travel nurses are actually older, like older women, so they're more like their 50s, 60s.
Hmm.
So it's just having patience, and just understanding that you just need to get the job done, really.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
perspective was what you said.
yeah,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of overlap with being in sales, where it's like
Yeah,
you do
for
get cursed
sure.
out on the phone. And I
Mhm.
like my technically my first full time job out of college was being a software sales recruiter because I had an
Yeah.
internship in my last semester that kind of carried over to a full
Mhm.
time job. But a small team up in North County, and similar to travel nurse, recruiting, it's like you're
Mhm.
looking for in my situation, software sales reps who are have a
Mhm.
certain skill set and are have a good resume that fits with some of the employers that are looking to fill positions, right?
For
So
sure.
certain software startups where they know, hey, we're going to get our next round of funding and we can hire
Yeah.
on three more sales guys in California. Boom, go.
Mhm.
And then they look, and then we're out, reaching out to people on LinkedIn, having phone calls. Some people get
Mhm.
mad. Some people are really excited. Some people are
Yeah, for
extremely
sure.
enthusiastic to work with you, and then
Mhm.
sadly they don't get the job. So there's a lot of there's a lot of
Yeah, man.
back and forth, and I think it's like working with humans in general and something as significant as their employment does bring a lot of weight. So I can imagine kind of like emotions getting high, but it's also something that I'm sure they're very appreciative of when you do help them find a position, right?
Yeah, man. Like there's a human element to this stuff. Like whenever you're having to deal with other people, like that, in terms of employment, like you really need to understand. Like sometimes it's easy to look at a candidate as like it's just a name on a piece of paper, but man, you really need to understand like these are also people and stuff. And that I think if you can adopt that and not take things personal, right? Because I think the worst thing you do is you let something, say a bad phone call or bad prospect, you let that dictate the rest of your day and how you talk to the rest of your clients. I think that's the worst thing that can happen. So you gotta be very objective, not take things personal. Just understand it's the line of work. I'm sure that, like you mentioned in sales, right? I know you and David for sure have to deal with that. So I think there's a lot of life lessons you can learn for sure in working with customer service. A lot of life lessons.
What are some of the day-to-day responsibilities? Do you feel like you're mostly looking for people to have like an initial phone call with to see like, hey, what's your situation like? Are you like have no job right now? Are you your contract's about to be up, so you're looking for the next contract, or what's kind of like your weekly, daily responsibilities?
It goes in line with that for us. So since I'm hybrid right now, I'm trying to make the full transition to recruiter, but they want to take me along slowly. I spend half my day as credentialing, half recruiters. So what I'll do is they give us a client list, right? We give calls, right, to see what their current employment status is, what they're looking for, right? If they're a good fit. For us, our database lines us up with like, for the most part, pretty accurately with what clients want in terms of positions, right? So it's not too hard where, they're like, oh, I'm not interested in this at all. It's more like sometimes when we give calls like, oh yeah, I'm very interested. I'm about to, it's pretty smooth, the transition. So that's how I spend my recruiting days. And then credentialing, once I recruit them right, I got to get them all set up. I got to make sure, depending on the facilities and the healthcare, what their requirements are, you got to get them vaxxed, right? Flu vaccination. You got to make sure they're having just their titers just for other, just other vaccinations maybe that may be required by the facility. You make sure they get all their health documents in. You got to make sure they sign paperwork. Then for us, we had CompTIA exams. So it's kind of like a refresher course to make sure that, they're competent and they're like, they want to feel that they're knowledgeable, right?
Yeah. So, is that taken like online or something? Like you send them a link, they have to sign in, depending on what their score is, gets registered with their resume, basically. Okay.
No, yeah, exactly. That's it. We have our own database and we basically sign the CompTIA exams. They'll get an email, right? For us, there's specialized ones. There's the general one, and then there's specialized ones. They have to take the general one, and then depending on what specialty they are, they take the specialized one. They get three attempts for each one. And then they just have to get like a certain score, like you said. Usually it's like 80%, right? But there are, unfortunately, sometimes where they don't, pass the courses, and then like you mentioned earlier, like sometimes people are enthusiastic about the job, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to let them hear the bad news that like, oh, we're going elsewhere. Right. That's something I'm learning to deal with right now because I've had 2 clients that actually didn't pass their CompTIA exams, and they're, friendliest people, like sweetest people, but like, those are the requirements of the job. You have to get a certain score, and certain amount of attempts didn't happen. So
for the well-being of the people, you know what I mean? I mean, it's a good, it's like shitty, but yeah, it's a good thing to have the standards for sure.
You learn empathy for sure. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of life lessons in this field for sure. Empathy and perspective are huge.
Yeah. So did you because I know some people who are really hard workers, successful people, and they do not prefer interacting with other humans as their day-to-day, right? Engineers, all that stuff. Like, did you find that like you like being social, so that's why you wanted to get into a social oriented position, or how did that all? Because I mean, you went from like math to that, let's say. So because again, there are people like even like my sister, she was a earth science major and now works in like product marketing and software, but she learned a lot and is appreciative of it. But I'm so curious how you was that on purpose or?
I'm very glad you brought that up because I feel like a lot of us, as soon as we graduate, we think because we have a bachelor's degree in a certain subject, you have to go down that career path, right? But a lot of jobs, they just require the bachelor's degree. Like something I learned in medical school, just from my girlfriend experience, that is not all the med students are bio majors. Right. There's some psych majors, There's some, there's some comp sci majors, kind of odd, but there, there's different majors. You just need to follow the curriculum and take the test. So I think that's very important that you brought that up, because whatever you graduate in, you don't automatically have to go down in that field, right? There's still opportunities. A lot of jobs have their certain curriculum, right? Like you have to
Yeah,
get work experience, right? But main thing is just having a bachelor's degree. Like that's the
absolutely.
most important thing. So I'm very glad you brought that up. To go back to your initial point regarding like
Social interaction and
yeah, social interaction and stuff. I think to make the transition, it was hard for me, right? I cause like my other job, for example, I just get in, do the work, don't talk to anyone, right? Just get the job done.
mhm.
Very, very chill. But I mean, there are times where you wish you could talk to people. You have coworkers. With my other job, I really don't have that, right? It's very independent. Um, I think to make the transition for me, because I also was in that field where I don't want to like really like engage socially on a daily basis. But for me, it was, I don't know, you kind of feel good, honestly. I think it's a good way to start your day when you start talking to a lot of people and stuff. Like
Yeah,
if you could, I think I'm realizing for me, like I actually get a lot of satisfaction out of helping these travel nurses, right, get them set up for the job, right? Because I think whenever you could like do someone like a favor, not a favor in a sense because they applied for the job, but like you could help them out, right? There's a sense of gratification on both sides, right? So I feel that was something I wasn't getting at my other job. So making the transition from mathematics to this final field is it wasn't something I was ever planning on doing,
hmm
but in doing so, right, there's something I got satisfaction out of it. It's like it's really cool to help people. I'm sure you also have the same experience of your job. It's just really cool to help people, get them what they want, right? At the end of the day, we're all people, we're all customers, something.
yeah.
So you can help someone, it feels good.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that,
Mm.
transcends any career, right? Because humans are humans, like we're
Yep.
social creatures.
Exactly.
I've even learned, like career aside, I've learned over time that the less social interaction I have, or the less hours or
Mhm.
minutes I'm spending interacting with someone, whether it's like a friend via the phone or people in person, I feel like
Mhm.
I'm less, feel less energized, I guess.
Yeah,
And
I
I
know
think it's a
exactly.
real
Yeah.
full blown phenomenon that
Mhm.
I think is something to take into consideration. Although
For sure.
everyone's different. You know what I mean? Some people love
For
being
sure.
by themselves for sure, but most of us probably not.
Yeah, I also think it's something you could just fall a trap, like kind of like trapped into as well. When you're in that cycle, you don't really talk to as many people at work. I think for everyone, they should at least try, like even if it's not just switching careers like me, you could just trying to talk more to your coworkers and stuff, like just building more connections, more friendly engagements, right? Because I think that goes a long way. Because the fact that for me, with my recruiter, right, he works with a lot of credentialing specialists, right? But I made it a goal to like talk to him more because there was an interest in being a recruiter, so I wanted to talk to him more, not as in the career path, just as a personal level. Like I wanted to establish a relationship first, right? You build a connection, and then from there you can kind of ease into like things that might help you. And for me, as learning the recruitment career, how that works is being a recruiter. So yeah, I think it's more, man. You should always try to establish connections because they lead to more opportunities. And I don't think there's ever a bad thing in having more opportunities,
Yeah,
more options.
yeah, and that's another big thing I like to emphasize is the power of mentors, right? And
For sure.
I'm a big believer in every young adult should find a mentor in whatever field they're trying to pursue, someone
Yeah,
who's a
man.
little bit older than them, and then someone who's a lot older than them. That way you can
Okay.
kind of get that experience where it's like if I'm trying to get into sales, and I work with a lot of college students trying to get into sales, where it's like
Yeah.
find someone, I mean, myself, who's a couple years older than you, because we went through
Mm-hmm.
what you're going through, how to apply,
Big
what
time. Yeah.
recruiters are looking for, what do I need on my resume, blah, blah, blah. And then also someone who's like 50, 60 years old, who's seen almost everything in the field, you know what I mean? And they're like, okay, here's where people go wrong. Here's how I would do things differently. Here's the young folks that
Mhm.
do well compared to the young folks who don't do well. So, and this could be
Mhm.
applied to fitness. You could be a nurse. The freaking doesn't
Yeah.
matter, but it's the power of mentors and, again, kind of paying it forward for, sharing experiences and all that good stuff.
Yeah, man. It's like I'm glad you brought that up because this is the point of this podcast, right? Like, for example, this video might not resonate with like other people that are just what I mentioned earlier, the comp sci majors, 4 year university, they're all set, right? I didn't have that path. So I'm sure you
Yeah.
had other interviewers that did have more direct path, right? That knew immediately what they wanted to do. So this as well is like a platform that could be also like, in a way, a sense of mentorship, just advice. Because like you said, man, with sales, like, you have to have a mentor. You have to like know how it works. You have to, garner as much knowledge as you can, right? You want to be successful.
Sink or
That's anything.
swim.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, man. You play, and it's just not sales, man. It's always you want to gain as much knowledge as you can, man, because there's no bad thing in having, a lot of like more and more knowledge, right?
Yeah.
There's not really any negative effects of, having that. So yeah, just
Yeah.
depicting brain stuff is very important.
Yeah. And so I know like growing up, I guess taking a step back to like,
Yeah,
when we were growing up and stuff. So I know that like we've known each other for a long, long time. We always
for sure.
enjoyed being very active, like,
Yeah.
playing sports, hanging out with one another.
Hmm.
And so would you say, like, I know that for you, a big part of your upbringing was like your grandpa, right? Like your grandpa,
For
I
sure.
think
Yeah.
like, spent a lot of time taking care of you. He used to, pick us up from school, take us home.
Yeah, man.
And he was a military veteran, which I have big respect for military and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Like, do you mind kind of walking through like how you were shaped or how you felt you were shaped growing up and how that kind of impacted, how you
Yeah, man.
feel about yourself today?
So yeah, I didn't really have a single parent, right? I didn't really have a father influence, but so I would say my grandpa was like my close thing to like a male like influence on me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you brought up military veteran. He was very disciplined. He was big on doing the right thing as well. He's big on character, and I think that's very important to always like emphasize character, like because
Mm-hmm.
character is adversity, right? Characters tested, just daily life character, right? Very important to know who you are, know what you stand for,
Yeah.
have principles, right? That's how you establish, friendships. That's how it's just, that's what he taught me. The biggest thing was be a man of principles.
Mm-hmm.
So I would,
Well, and
yeah,
there's
if I,
something, there's something like a psychology related on that, where if you have your own principles and you're firm in your own belief, then
yeah,
you're less likely to be swayed by this trend,
for
this
sure.
social trend over
Yeah.
here, this little, all this type of stuff. So, so that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, man, I know who I am. Yeah, and a big part of that is because I had that. He was the base. He was the base. He established in the early principles.
Hmm. Yeah. And as you know, like, my dad, he comes from a military background. He was very strict
Yeah.
growing up, which I'm very grateful for. And I think
Mhm.
I felt like that gave me a good, both was a good role model, but taught me like, hey, no one's going to hand you shit. If you want to, like, you need to figure out a way to stand up on your own 2 feet. Like, do you think, was he teaching you a lot of that stuff? Was he kind of guiding you to make sure you were getting your homework done? You were,
Yeah.
treating your mom well, all that stuff?
Yeah, so big thing on treating your mom well, because right, I was a single parent, so like my mom was all like the only parent I had. Big time on that. That was his
Yeah.
only daughter as well, so he was very, he's protective in general. Like even just not even just with grandkids, for anyone, like they have to treat my mom right. Like
Yeah.
my mom worked hard. She was, she had my brother when she was like I think 20. She had me at like 27, right? She was very young. She had to do it on her own. Strong, independent woman. Worked as well. Didn't go to college. Had a create out of nothing kind of in a sense, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I think I always look at my mom as an example of character as well. But yeah, he definitely established that for sure. Like treat your parents well. No one's going to give you anything. That's where the principles come into hand. And
Yeah.
homework, he wasn't academic inclined like that. Yeah, man. So like when we would do math and stuff, right? There's always the meme of like, doing math with your parents when you're younger, and like there's always kids crying because they can't keep up with their parents and stuff. I wasn't like that. I was pretty good at math early age, so he really didn't have to help me academically. And to be fair, man, like I don't think he was that, academically like inclined. I'm pretty sure he was just like just went to school just for fuck's sake, right?
Yeah.
So and he just went straight out of the military when he was 18. So I don't
Well,
think
I
he
was
was
going to
big
say
on
he's
that.
from another generation. You know what I mean? Where,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
where was
Yeah.
he from originally in the U.S.? Like, what state was he
So
from
he's
and all that?
born, yeah, Walsenburg, California. Not California, Colorado.
Okay, gotcha.
So he grew up on a
Yeah,
farm. He grew up on a farm. Yeah.
got it. And he fought World War II, right? Not and Vietnam,
Yeah,
or was it
he did
Korea and
two wars.
Vietnam?
No, he did both. He did both. So he did World War
Wow.
II and then Vietnam as well.
Yeah, that's insane, man. I mean, I always like hearing the stories about just like that generation and like the amount of crazy crap that they went through, to
More
create this
perspective,
luxury and prosperity for us,
bro. Like the shit he had to deal with versus shit we have to deal with on a daily basis is not the fucking same. That guy was getting shot at and stuff. Like he's gotten shot. I think he's gotten shot in the ass before. And like
Yeah.
bro, we will never experience that having to like be on the line shooting at other people in a war. Like I'm
Yeah.
saying, we definitely never had to deal with that shit. So for
Yeah,
sure.
for a greater purpose, you know what I mean? It's like they weren't just like,
Yeah.
random kids. I'm sure that there was some of that who just like they didn't know what they want to do, they jump into the military, but it was like a big deal where it's like, hey, like we're, our country pushes for, liberties and prosperity, and there are foreign entities that want otherwise. So these guys are basically kind of risking their lives, and a lot of them did die. But yeah, to your point, like I know David's godfather, our Uncle Rick, who lives across the street, he
Yeah.
fought in Vietnam, and he was like, he was like someone who was like, just turned 18, never left South Carolina, never been on a plane, and this fool's like
Insane.
immediately flying to freaking Guam. You know what I mean? To go get,
Yeah.
put on a uniform and go fight in Vietnam. But he has stories of getting, he got his leg blown up, he got shot at, and like other people who fought in Vietnam have fingers missing. So it's a hardcore generation. You know what I mean? And there's this
Big time.
phrase I really like where it talks about hard times create hard men, and hard men create soft times, and then soft times create soft men. So it's like,
Mhm.
that they went through like, World War II is insane. These guys had to be tough. They did what they needed to. A lot of crazy
Mhm.
stuff happened, but they produced a softer society. And what what
Byproduct.
what will we do out of that? Will we do something
Mhm.
out of it, or will we take it for granted?
Yeah, man, you're byproduct of your environment, like you said, bro. What he had to do with 18 versus compared to like what we had to do with 18. Graduate college, we just got to decide on our future, man. We didn't, they don't have that luxury. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? They just had to go fight, like you're saying, in a war. Like, look
Yeah.
at us now. We're like, we're a lot older. They didn't know that wasn't guaranteed for them.
Yeah.
So, like, it really, like, you put it in perspective like that, it makes you, like, be very grateful, right? Take, understand we're still living, just take life, appreciate life. So, big time, man. A lot
Yeah.
easier for us.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, just to have that type of perspective, I think is good for people our age and younger to experience. And like even this
Mhm.
whole podcast started because I interviewed my mom, who is a Vietnamese boat refugee. Like she basically had to leave her country, like fought starvation, all this crazy stuff to eventually get asylum and come to the United States. But having that perspective like had a positive impact on me and my siblings, and that's why I wanted to kind of share that story and share more stories of the older generation, and like why we need to be more grateful and take advantage of the luxuries we have today and do
Big time.
something with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we don't have. I actually had a discussion with a friend the other day. Like, we are so fortunate to be born in America.
Yeah.
Like, imagine we're born in like a third world country. Like what I complain about is something that other people around the world would be grateful to complain about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We have the opportunity to become whatever we want, really do. Like, we go college, go to high school, go college, so forth. A lot of kids don't have that opportunity, man, based on
Yeah.
and it's just, it's off luck. It's like, I didn't choose to be, I was just born here, my parents, I didn't choose to be born in America, it's just based off pure luck, honestly.
Yeah. I wonder if, cause you're, so like, as I'm youngest of six. So like there's pros and
Yeah.
cons to that. And like you had your older brother who I believe also had a big impact on like your life. And like you still,
Sure.
spent a lot of time with them. He went the law enforcement route. Like, maybe can
Mhm.
you like walk us through like, that relationship, how that positively impacted you, and like, what he's all about?
Yeah, man. As you know, whenever you have an older brother, right, I think it's common for the younger brother to immediately look up to him, right, to look for him as inspiration, just looking at him as as principles and stuff. My older
Yeah.
brother is definitely influenced by my grandfather, right, because my brother actually wanted to join the military, but my grandfather talked him out of it. So from there, my brother's like, all right, well, I want to make an impact on the community. I want to help people, right? I want to like save people. I want to be like, my brother has like this, kind of wants to be like, I don't want to say he wants to be a hero, but he wants to, what I'm saying, like have like just help
What's
people.
do a noble
No, yeah,
contribution, all that stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be very noble. So he was definitely influenced by my grandfather. And because of that, he became a sheriff. We became, cop first and then to sheriff. And now I think he wants to become a detective.
Nice.
So he was, yeah, very influenced to help people. I think that's his purpose in life, just to help people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what it's all about. I mean, the way I even say it is like, my goal is to interview successful Americans. That doesn't necessarily mean wealthy. You know what I mean? These are people who
Yeah, it depends how you
you
define
have your
success.
shit together and you're happy, you love your family, you nurture your relationships, you try to take care of your community. I consider that successful. And those people do bring a lot of wisdom versus, let's say, a millionaire, guy who runs a porn agency and doesn't have, a moral, the same type of morals. So it makes a difference for sure. Um, and so I guess like I always like to kind of end these interviews with like two major questions for like my guests. So
Yeah.
first, what kind of closing advice would you have for young adults who any young adult turning 18? They have the opportunity to go to community college or normal
Okay.
or 4-year college or military or frickin' go be a plumber. I mean, so anything for a young adult.
Whatever
Like
they
what
want.
kind of exactly what would you share with them? And it doesn't have to be career wise either.
Yeah, so I think a big thing too, as well, is like I feel like when you turn 18, you feel like there's so much pressure on you immediately, like pressure on the world's on you. I think if I could go back for me personally, I'd like take a breath. You know what I'm saying? To realize like, like dude, you'll be fine then. Just take a breath. Obviously you have to be decisive and like actions. To become
Don't sit
wherever you
around
want
and
to
do
be.
nothing.
But yeah, just don't sit around and do nothing. You can't be content and stuff. But you just take a breath, and then start plotting. Right, start like for me, write down the advantages and the pros and cons of each field, and then from there you just go on head first, just and don't ever shortcut. Don't ever like be full in for sure, man. Like I feel like the best thing I've learned in life is you cannot like half-ass things.
Yeah.
Right, you gotta be fully
It'll
committed
pay,
for
you'll pay
anything.
the price later. Yeah.
You will pay the price, right? And this is not just education, anything like fitness, whatever area of life, dating, just any area of life, you need to like, don't, I think the better things come when you're fully locked in and you want to like, you're putting all your effort towards this one thing versus being like 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and talk
So,
to people. It's like you'll freaking, same thing with like when I would
yeah,
talk to
that's it.
my sales mentors. It's like, they made mistakes in the past that they're sharing wisdom with me so I can hopefully avoid. And there's so many times
Yeah.
where it's like, shoot, I've talked to so many people where they say, hey, I like A, B, and C, but I'm scared that if I go down the path of A, 1 year later, I'm going
Mhm.
to determine I really should have went down the path of C. And it's like, that's a normal
Mhm.
freaking human phenomenon, but it doesn't change the
Yeah.
fact that you have to actually go down one of those paths to figure that out. Like you
Sure.
can't say, I'm going to do neither. You know what I mean? And that's actually, I think, like a big thing I'm starting to learn from all these conversations with people. It's like, you have to take action and you'll learn.
Yeah, man. Learning is the biggest thing, man. Like, don't be afraid to make mistakes and just learn from them, right? I think a
Yeah.
mistake is a mistake if you don't learn from it, right? But if you learn from it, there's no such thing as mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's only
So,
experiences that you can reflect on positively or reflect on
yeah,
negatively. And that really is your choice. Um,
it really
so I
is.
guess, so final question. I'm asking this to every guest that I talk to, but what would you love to see for the future generation or for the future of America? Let's say 5, 10 years in the future. What would you love to see more of or see less of?
So this is a good question. Like, we're talking socially, culturally, or just
Could be anything, like even when I talked to my buddy Josh, he was saying that like he wants to see less kids behind screens. You know what I mean? Where he's like, dude,
okay.
doesn't really, it could be
That's a
bad.
big thing, dude.
Anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think when we were kids, for sure, like we're always out and about. You know what I'm saying? Always like we
Climbing
weren't. I feel
trees.
like yeah, you do miss out on the world if you're like just live. I feel like if you do like as a kid, especially if you just live behind the screen. Like I think the best moments I had when I was a kid was like forming all those friendships, all those adventures. Right? You can't really have that if you're just like playing video games. And I know that's hard for us to say because we played a lot of video games. Right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't play video games. I'm saying maybe just like balance, which is hard for a kid. Right?
Yeah.
You're a kid, you don't really know much. You get, it's easy to get addicted to things. But I think there's a life lesson there for sure. Balance, right? Go
Yeah.
play outside. But if you want to play video games, play video games. Just have a balance to it. You know what I'm saying? If you
Yeah.
want to stay up all night, you maybe do that once or twice. Maybe I wouldn't recommend it, obviously, but if you want to,
Yeah.
and then don't make it a recurring habit, right? I'm big on not being an extremist in anything in life, whether that's
Yeah.
politics, whether that's just any form of anything. Just don't be. I don't think you should be extremist on either side. I think you should be a balance. I think you should see both perspectives and kind of be in the middle. I think the middle is usually the best.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, like too much of anything isn't good. Like we definitely played our fair share of
Yeah,
video games, and we've had our fair
for
share of
sure.
my mom yelling at us six a.m. in the morning because we're still awake. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because she wanted the best for us, right? And it's like, hey, I'm not saying
It's not healthy.
don't
Yeah.
play. Exactly. It's like I'm not saying don't play video games, but like don't go 8 hours in a row. I mean, and you should like just as I'm like thinking out loud, you should be spending more hours playing outside and doing that compared to video games. So even if you do have a week where you're playing a lot, like okay, you should off balance that by go climbing a fucking tree or running around outside or doing
Physical
something.
health. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, physical health as well. It's just life lesson.
Yeah. Nice, man. Well, sweet. I appreciate your time.
Mhm.
I
For
appreciate you
sure.
sharing like your experiences. I mean, one of the main things I'm trying to teach the younger generation is like every person who's found success or found happiness in life has gone through some form of suffering or failure or challenges or hardship. But that doesn't
Hmm.
mean that they should, you would never look back and say, man, I wish I didn't get that job, or I wish I didn't do that, the DA's office job where I'm driving back and forth and all that. Cause it's like, even though it sucked at the time, let's say, you learned a lot and it did shape who you are today. So it's, that's just kind of one of the overlapping principles I'm trying to
Yeah,
teach
man.
everyone.
For sure. Like anytime you do something, you might feel it's a waste. Like I think it's easy for me. Like would be easy for me to look back and be like, oh, that was such a waste. Like wasted so much gas, wasted so much time. Could have had more experiences, right? But that doesn't do me any good. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the fuck does that do for me? You got to look at the positives and stuff. You always do. Like, I know it's very easy to look at negative things, right? Um, but I challenge people, like, if you can, always try and look at the positive, even if it's like the truths can be ugly, whether that's like, for example, a past negative experience or just in general. Like, I think in deciding careers, and you really need to look in the mirror, right? Because I think it would have been easy for me when I was working at DA's office and being at UC Irvine. Like, I know it was hard, the grind and stuff, but I think it would have been very easy for me to be like, oh, I've already, dedicated so much to this. I'll just continue down this path, right? But
Mm,
if I did that, I'd probably be miserable right now. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I'd
totally.
ever would like being a lawyer. Like I respect lawyers, I like what they do, but like I don't wouldn't like that life for me personally,
Yeah.
right?
You wouldn't have known that unless you did the experience to learn that about yourself.
Yeah,
Right.
man, that as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man.
Mhm.
Well, again, dude, I appreciate your time. Appreciate you sharing the experiences with the next gen.
Yeah,
Hopefully, someone watches this, gets inspired,
yeah.
and learns something out
Mhm.
of it. But yeah, I'm excited to post this later, and we'll keep you in the loop with every further conversation that I do, man. But yeah, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Again, just shout out to what you're doing, man. It's very, like you said, even if it impacts just one person, it's pretty big. Like you change just the idea of changing someone's life for the better, just giving them any wisdom, whether it's on this direct podcast that we're doing right now or any of your other, interviewees. Very important. And I wish I, had something like this when I was younger, for sure. Just getting, because I didn't have, I feel like growing up, I didn't really have, my mom didn't go to college, my grandpa didn't go to college, my brother went to college, but he was also a father in college too. So he didn't really have time to help out his, younger brothers much. Just having something like this as a platform, say someone just stumbles upon it, right, is huge, man. You could directly impact someone's life for the better. So again, thank
Yep.
you for having me on. And I hope, I hope great things for this podcast.
I appreciate it, man. We'll do another conversation as well, man. Anytime you're back
For
in
sure.
San Diego, we'll talk about whatever we want, man. So yeah, appreciate it, brother.